phones on silent, please, folks, if we get into AI and the transformation of AV and IT. This is the challenges faced in adapting to transformative AI technology, its exciting directions and vast opportunities. On the panel, a wealth of experience, insights, and diverse perspectives to moderate all the way from the University of Otago, Head of IT Support Services, and also the VP of AETM. Would you please welcome Mr. Emerson Pratt?
Good afternoon and welcome. Well, quick introduction. As mentioned, my name's Emerson Pratt. I'm Head of IT Support at the University of Otago, so kia ora to all my fellow Kiwis in the room. So what is AV support at the university? Well, we're using AI in a lot of different ways. We are using it as virtual technicians, and we'll talk more about that later. And of course, in education, AI is really the buzzword, if it's not the buzzword in the AV industry. I was thinking a couple of days ago, who remembers year 2K? Remember that time? Remember, I got a toaster for a wedding present, and it had year 2K compliant. And that was a Breville toaster. And it feels like AI is a bit like that at the moment. If your product doesn't have AI on it, your marketing team probably isn't doing their job. So there's a lot of myths and there's a lot of overhype, maybe, or maybe it's underhype. So maybe in this panel, we're going to talk a little bit about AI in education, some of the experiences we've had in this amazing panel, and also want to get your insights on what you're doing and some questions that you may have. So download that app and get the questions going, and they come right to this iPad here, and I'll make sure we include them for our panel. So I'll just do some quick introductions, and Graham, if we go along the line.
Sure, thank you. So Graham Walsh, I'm not from here, I'm from London in the UK, so pleased to be here. And I work for NEAT, and I'm the Director of Solution Architecture, so I work with our engineering team and also with customers, so a great hybrid role, working with customers and R&D.
And Graham and I apparently got the same dress code this morning. I'm a bit worried if I go to the NEAT store, I'm going to get questions asked of me about their product.
Hi everyone, I'm James Sismanis from Vision One Technologies, and we specialise in technology for the education market, primary and secondary education. And if I was to give you an idea of what my title is, it's probably somebody that wears too many hats and could probably use some help from AI, I think.
Hi, I'm Joe Androulas. I'm Executive Vice President of Corporate Development for BiAmp. What does that mean practically? I oversee marketing, product management, partnerships, acquisitions, things of that nature. Join you all the way from Dallas, Texas.
Excellent. I'm Sarah Drysdale, COO and Head of Product at CommBox. I'm a former educator, and for anyone who doesn't know CommBox, we do interactive and commercial displays and LED.
Excellent. So we've at least got 3 continents represented here, and really New Zealand's close to Antarctica, so let's call that 4 continents, shall we? Excellent. Well, let's start with that big question. How are you seeing AI being used in IT, AV in the education sector from your experience? Graham, did you want to start us off?
Sure. So, I think, as you said, AI's got a lot of meaning, a lot of diversity to it, and what actually is AI, and how it can be used in each different application. Me, from a video background, we're seeing on how we can use to pick out people. So, looking at people, faces, detecting them, and showing them to people on the screen. So, taking out all the wasted space. And that's, one area of AI that we're looking at here at NEAT. And that's what we see our customers doing. They're looking to get the best video experience they can in meetings. And, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, in hybrid meetings, especially in education.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think, look, from our perspective as an integrator, a lot of the conversations that we're having primarily at the moment is with educators. Do we have any educators in the room currently? Couple? Okay. Look, I think it's a really interesting one because... And I think about this a lot from when I first went to school. And we used to talk about technology and leveraging technology in the professional environment. And they used to talk about the calculator as an example. And they used to say, listen, make sure you understand mathematics, make sure you understand the nuances of what you're learning about, because you're not going to have a calculator with you every single place that you go. And of course, now we live in a world where we do have things like calculators with us, right? So I think it's the same thing with AI in that we need to... There's a step that we need to take to allow us to understand that this technology is a tool and it's not a device that will supplant some of the fears that I've seen in the education space. So it's about that understanding and that equilibrium.
All right, I'm gonna give this a couple of different perspectives. So artificial intelligence is, you asked, is being overhyped. A lot of technologies have, and I honestly do not believe that this one is being overhyped. And the reason for that is not because it's so perfect and infallible, but it's so much broader than almost any other technology that we've hit before, that it's going to have an impact on you no matter what part of the business that you're in. And I'm going to ask you that you think about the impact of AI in 3 different dimensions. So the first one is going to be a productivity dimension. What does this do to enable me to go and do my business more effectively in an effort to go and serve my customer base? And it could be things like, doing automated technicians. We look at how we can provide tech support using AI more effectively. We use it in our marketing department to draft material. We use it to produce our product definitions. We use it for consistency of checks. We use it tremendously for code development. So there's a whole manner of things that are just about how we do our business better. The second one is the one that Graham mentioned, which is how can we use AI technology to make our products more interesting? What new capabilities can we enable in our products by introducing artificial intelligence? And there's a host of those. Noise reduction, noise management in general. I could tell some really kind of cool examples of things that you will see in the future that are very, very different from the way we've thought about doing this in the past. But those are the kind of ones that you expect. The third one that you probably don't think about much, I'm going to urge you to consider, because I really think it's going to be the biggest impact on your business. And that is, what is it going to do to the work behaviors of your customer? So we all think about how our products go and support the work styles of our customers. We really need to seriously consider how those work styles are going to get disrupted, and what does that mean for the kind of solutions that they're going to be looking at. And artificial intelligence is going to have a big impact on their work environment. So AI is going to have something we're not going to get to avoid, and we all need to wrap our heads around how we're going to handle it.
I definitely agree with everything you've just said. I think when you look at the DNA of learning, AI is actually impacting every single part of the education process. It's impacting front of classroom experience. It's impacting the way the students are learning and the technology they're using to do their individual practice. It is impacting feedback and the way the teachers can actually give real-time personalized feedback in the classroom. It's also impacting assessment in a huge way. So I think we're going to continue to see so many changes in this space, and our products that get used in the education process are going to have AI that the end users can see and AI that they can't see. And at the end of the day, our job as people who create the technology is ultimately to solve the problem for the teacher in the classroom, which is to make the learning experience as simple and as easy as possible. And our technology is there just to enable that process. If we decide as product makers to incorporate AI into our products, we're going to do that because it delivers a very best experience to the teachers and the students in the classroom. So yeah, I think there's going to be lots of ways we see AI change the learning experience.
Sure. Following on from that question, when you're developing products and including AI, what considerations are you actually thinking about when you put the AI technology into the products? Because there's a lot of fear out there, especially with our educators on AI. There's the fear of, are our students going to be using it for this? What's happening to my data, et cetera, et cetera. So what things are you considering? What should we be considering as we're developing AI tools?
So when we're looking at integrating AI into our products at CommBox, we definitely look to things like the Australian, what's it called? A framework that has come out around the use of generative AI. So that's looking at things like ensuring that AI is accessible to everyone, that it's ethically applied, that we're taking cybersecurity into consideration. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I think we need to use these guiding frameworks when we're creating the products. And yeah, we need to put the students and the teachers first when we're thinking about it.
And I'll kind of tail on that. You said just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can means somebody will. I think it's the reality. And it goes to a little bit what you were saying, James. I think we have to go and get our arms around that. It is here. It's going to be used. If you think of the darkest or the brightest application of it, both of them are going to be pursued. And so I think the best approach is just, how are you going to contend with that truth? Because otherwise we just won't be ready for what's going to happen, because it will.
Yeah. And we spoke about Y2K before, and I think, history has a funny way of repeating itself, right? What we're seeing today and what we're talking about today, we all spoke about, maybe not me, because I would have been born not too early before that, but we all spoke about this 30 odd years ago, right? With the advent of the internet. So we are seeing a case of rejection and opposition to the technology from people that don't fully understand it and can't grasp its benefits. And again, a lot of this is really just about accepting, I shouldn't say accepting because it's probably not the right word, but appreciating that this technology is emerging and is at the forefront of what we are doing day to day from both a personal and professional standpoint. And from an education perspective, I think, and this is a conversation I have with a lot of our customers, we look at this through the lens that we see the world today and our understanding of the history of technology that we currently have. Children that are being born today or kids that are coming through the education system in 15, 20 years from now, when this technology becomes completely commonplace, they're not going to understand the way that we look at it because they've grown through the education system with the use of this technology. So the same way that next generation adopted the internet through the way they were participating in teaching and learning, we've got to find a way to transition artificial intelligence through our general teaching and learning practicums.
And I think the way sort of we apply AI is to make it transparent, so it's not seen to the end users. So I think people are afraid when they hear about, oh, AI is doing something to me, or, I'm doing a live transcript on screen. People will see what I say. For us, what we think about is make it transparent. It's not there, so you just focus on, that education piece. So the key there is really that people don't want to be seen that it's happening, but you want to make the magic happen, and that wows people. And obviously lets them be more efficient as an educator teaching. They haven't got to worry about technology, and that's the biggest thing, is people are afraid of technology as well.
Absolutely. Actually, a question that just come in, how do you effectively manage client concerns about the ethical handling of data when it comes to AI and training models? And how can you effectively disclose to clients and how their data is being used? And I guess answer that a little bit, but do you want to expand on that?
Yeah. When it comes to using customer data for training models, the truth is that there are very, very few people who will actually be training models. Most people are going to be, at best, they may be fine-tuning a model that's already existing, but the what they call these frontier models, right? That really is the domain of these big people who've got budgets to go run very, very massive data centers. So I think as a practical matter, that concern doesn't apply as broadly as people think. And where it does apply, those large corporations are motivated by financial interest to not misuse your data, because if they're found to be doing that, it would be destructive to their business. Just the same way that we feel we've gotten comfortable putting our documents up in, Office 365 and the like, it's really not a whole lot different than that. Now, the difference is once it is in a model, if it ever does escape, it so much more can be done with it than ever before. But the fundamental risk and the motivations for avoiding that risk are the same.
So it's an interesting point on that model, because I think about this quite a lot. I do a lot of work in the creative space outside of what I do professionally. And it's a conversation that comes up quite a bit as far as training data, copyright infringement, and all things that do come across that domain, both in a creative space and an educational space. And I often think about it from the lens of, throughout the history of time, every idea that's been generated, every great concept that's been innovated has been adopted and inspired by something that came before it. And training data, yes, there is a gray area, and that's something that we all understand and accept, but ultimately what training data is doing in artificial intelligence is providing a pool of knowledge that we're organically pulling from without having to ask 1,000,001 questions organically without searching through technology to get that same answer.
Absolutely. When I look at university, being from the university sector myself, we've got this big concept of what we put in the cloud, AI, and then your private AI environments. So, for example, we're running models in our own AV team where we've taken the engine from, say, ChatGPT or somewhere else, but we're using it within our own data center, so no data's been leaked out into the public. And I think most institutions really have that idea of public and private cloud, be it AI or be it data cloud. So I think that's something every institution really needs to think of. They need to have good policies around that, and more importantly, good education around that for their staff. So you're aware of what does happen when I'm using ChatGPT. Where is that information being used, and how can I maybe make that private, or what's appropriate to be public? A lot of people have a feeling that all their data is private. I'd probably challenge you and say, how important is most of your data? Quite honestly, if someone wants to read half my email inbox, feel free. And if you could categorize it for me and list what I should be looking at, please let me know. That'd be fantastic. So yeah, I think there is that concept, but education is important.
Yeah, I think with that is, yes, you can dive in, start using, I'm going to say the word first, Copilot, for example, from Microsoft. But like you mentioned, it's got to be responsible. You've got to have governance around it, because if you just say Copilot, go and look at SharePoint, it's going to look at every single document that every single student did over the last number of years. So that has to be done first before you let Copilot loose on your intranet. You've got to put governance around the place first, which is, I think, the hardest part.
And I agree with you, Graham. What I was going to mention on that is that one of the differences with AI, or the introduction of AI, is its ability to consume essentially an unlimited amount of data and drive meaning from it. And so in the past, you could think, well, look at all the cameras around here. Yeah, but who's got the time to go look at all that film and to worry about whether I was walking down that street or not? AI can reverse that process, which is, nobody cares whether you are walking down the street until they do. And when they do, they can say, could you tell me where Graham Evans has been recently? And it will look through everything and show me where he's been. So I don't have to go and say, was he on this street? Was he on that street? I can reverse the question and AI will go do that. That is something we've never encountered before.
Excellent. I guess from an integrator or point of view, many of the audience here are probably integrators, probably working with our institutions and with the product sets here. What concerns do you think they should be thinking about and how they are developing for the future? What do you think are the big concerns for our integrators out there?
From an integrator standpoint, or
Yeah.
look, we are really still in an infant stage of this technology, so there are still so many questions more than there are answers. And that's probably obviously what we're up here to talk about, right? But a lot of this is coming down to a case-by-case basis in the products and software that we're deploying around this field. So everyone's got a different level of understanding of security risks, infringement, copyright, and data analysis. But I think from an integrator standpoint, a lot of the messaging that we're trying to deliver to a lot of our education spaces is not to feel confrontational with the technology, but rather to understand that there are avenues that we can develop products in the spaces of robotics, in the spaces of where am I going with this? I've lost my train of thought. I apologize. Joking. You got anything for me?
I think just thinking about future-proofing, when you look at display technology particularly, I think when you're looking at advising your customers on what display technology to put in, think about where the technology is headed. So we're adding neural processing units to display technology now to set up for the future of AI and allowing better processing on the screens themselves. So just think, when you're talking to vendors, what is their positioning around AI? Where are they headed? Because if you're making an investment now, you don't kind of want to cut yourself short for the future of the things that are coming.
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I think the other challenge is there is no one AI. That there's so many different variants and so many different interpretations of what AI is, and for you as integrators, it's so difficult because training your staff and your support engineers, which model, what area do you look at, and I think it's been armed and dangerous about everything.
Well, I think from an integrator internal perspective, a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now is around support. It's around capturing the data. It's around capturing documentation, drawings, diagrams, and be able to feed that into our own database to pull from, whether that's an augmented support portal that customers can refer to, or whether that's an internal option that we can pull from as far as, I can't remember the job that we did 7 or 8 years ago that had the following product in there. Remind me, AI, as to how I get the answer for the following error. So I think that's what we're seeing a lot more of from that side.
And I agree with you. I mean, I actually think that the impact on the integrators, if manufacturers do their job well, will to make life much, much easier, right? It'll allow you to put together the technology effectively without having to understand it as deeply, because an AI can stand between it, right? It can capture that knowledge and carry it into your installations. And so it really has the opportunity to go and improve the delivery of AV services dramatically. But we have to do our job and incorporate it into the products, like Graham says, in almost a seamless way, so that you don't have to think of it as AI.
Cool. Excellent. I guess one thing I've heard a lot about is fear from technicians about, what does this mean for my job? I've got AI bots that can answer support questions. You hear stories about AI, say, designing systems, etc., or layouts. What do you say to that?
I think if you look at the first thing, I think you mentioned it, Joe, earlier, training your models for, let's say, a support database. it can only do so much. It can only answer a certain question. And, I do it all the time. You go onto a website, you start the chat, and it's another AI bot. Is it going to actually answer the question I need? And ultimately, you're going to have to go through to someone in tech support and get the right answer. So I think it's great for a certain area. It's not going to replace people. You still need those people, those experts to, as you say, what happened 6 years ago in that install job? Who plugged that cable into that lectern?
That's right. Yeah.
I'd like to be that comforting. I really do think it's going to cost a lot of jobs. I agree that it's not there yet and that there's still things, but when I see what we do every day and how it advances, it's not going to solve everything. By no means. I have this expression of, attack a dragon from the tail, which is intended to mean like worry about the problems it can solve, right? And it can't solve every problem, but it can take real work off people's plates. And at the outset, right, it's just going to allow them to focus on the higher value things. But at some point, it is going to say, pretty much it's taking care of almost everything there. And I do think we have to be, kind of honest with ourselves about that. It is not going to eliminate people, right? There's always going to be new challenges and all of that, but it's going to change the way we work. I do believe that.
Excellent. There's actually there's a bit of a follow-up question here on that. Is the cost and focus of implementing AI for AV support taking away from the actual AV person support? AV in-person support. Since AI can't physically help AV support, is this still vital, and what does the panel view on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's probably more pertinent to, I'd say, national scale businesses and those that have larger resources. I think it's absolutely the point that there is a lot of research, development, and cost expenditure that goes into developing an AI support system. So I think the answer is somewhere in between. I think it's understanding that a level of artificial intelligence integration is required to help better support our systems, but we still need people not only to train that data, but to manage that data long term. And so finding a balance between what we invest in developing artificial intelligence, but still relying on human knowledge, at least for today, is paramount. Now, 10 years from today, who knows? Things might change completely. But the AI technology that we have today is only as bad as it'll be until tomorrow. It's only as bad as it was yesterday. We're only getting better and better, quicker and quicker. And so the answers that we can come up with to these questions today are very different to the answers that we'll be able to give you 6, 12, 18 months down the track, right? Because that's how fast we're moving and how the cost is changing.
So when it comes to things like tech support and so forth, what's interesting is it takes no more effort to train an AI than in fact, it takes a fraction of the time and effort to train an AI than it does to do a tech. And once you train the AI, you've got scale that you can never get with techs. And the way you train an AI is precisely the way you train a human tech. We give it the exact same documents that we give training material. And then what we do is we let the bots engage with users, internal and external, and we have other bots watch when they get it wrong and watch when they're unable to answer the questions. And we use that to produce training material for the next round. And so it becomes a kind of a virtual reinforcing cycle, and it's all automated. So, to the concern, are we redirecting resources to be better put to use there? It's like, it's actually amplifying it dramatically.
We're looking at building these kind of things into the actual product itself so that it can predict that when something's going to go wrong and then hopefully try to remediate it real time so that it eliminates any downtime in the classroom or the meeting room.
Mm-hmm. And I guess if I look from what we're doing is, if I take my desktop support side, there was a big push maybe 10 years ago to do remote desktop support. You save the travel time, etc. But what I found is actually people still like people. And so I actually said to my team, look, I know you can do this job remotely. You absolutely could do this, and it would be far more efficient. But the customer, in some cases, actually wants that human interaction. So I think there still is that place for that human interaction. And it may be at different parts of a project. If you take a large-scale project, for example, a really important part is about getting that buy-in with the customer. AI can't do that, but a good technician can have that buy-in with the customer and that relationship. AI is not great at relationships. You can pretend, but it's not really good at it. So I think the role changes. What makes us human becomes far, far more important. And so I think that's an important role. And that is going to be a challenge for some of our kindred spirits? Because there are some of us who maybe like that nice dark room, you know. I think that's going to be more a challenge. I think those dark rooms, that's where AI does a really good job. So I think there are challenges there.
It's interesting you say that, Emerson, quickly, because you said people do like people. But have you spoken to a 17-year-old today?
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah,
It may not last.
yeah. And quite honestly, I prefer a text over phone. The most useless thing on my phone is the phone. I use apps, I'm using texting, but I'm very, very rarely using the phone, which I find kind of weird.
But you bring up a good point, though, because there are people do have different preferences for how they like to engage people. And I think we can respect and accommodate that easily and even allow we use AIs for tech support in particular in two ways, right? You can access it online with a chatbot, and maybe that's all you want to do. You're 17 years old. You don't want to talk to a person. It can't be anything worse. But other people, we have AI-assisted tech support. And so the AIs basically just serve as they listen in on the conversation. They make recommendations in real time. And this is a wonderful training aid for new tech support because every tech support person has the skill level of the AI because they can at least have that backing. And so you can still have the human interaction. You have a competent human that you're dealing with. So I think there's a lot of benefit from what I guess cyborgs, right?
So all your tech support's now experts. From day one, they become experts.
Exactly
That's
right.
very impressive.
That's consistency then.
Yeah.
But I also think, like you say, the in-person thing, people like to see people, look what COVID did to us. It forced us all home and we all want to be back in person at events like this now. And I think, as you mentioned, remote support, it's okay, it's efficient. But then if you have AI doing it, then it can only do that one task probably. Then if you're sitting next to someone, can you look at this problem in Outlook? Or they can evolve the conversation and that's where human interaction, I think, really works.
Absolutely. Yeah, cool. If you're a new technician or a new product out there, a new company, where would you be spending your time in AI? What education should we be looking for? What kind of people should we be looking to hire into our organizations? What training should we be providing our staff?
I think in terms of generative AI, definitely how to write prompts well, and how to actually get the AI to give you an answer that's useful.
For some who may not know, could you explain what that is?
So prompt is the words you're typing into the generative AI to produce the answer for you. And I know we've probably all dabbled across Copilot and ChatGPT and had that moment where we've typed something in and it's given us the most useless answer back. It's absolutely a skill, learning how to write a good quality prompt. And it is really important within our organizations and within our education system that we learn to do this well. Every time we hit enter, it's burning resources, it's costing money. So it's a really important skill to learn how to get a really good answer out of it first time round. And not just waste those moments. So learning how to do prompts for everyone, critical skill, just like we all learnt grammar and how to read, prompt writing, super important.
So I'm going to encourage everybody to use kind of a recursive process, which is anytime you feel like you need to be an expert in something to use AI effectively, remind yourself that you have an expert in that and ask the AI. And I even mean that, we've seen that for prompt. If you're like, hey, I want to get this particular answer out, I'm not quite sure how to go and prompt an AI for that. Literally, you tell that to an AI and say, can you recommend a prompt for me in order to get the best possible result? And it will write you the prompt that then you give it back to it and it'll respond to it. And that works astonishingly well. It even works to the point of producing a document or a draft of something and then asking the AI that one of the best prompts that you give it back to is, how would you improve this? Even if it wrote that the first time, it will improve its own output. So this it's called multi-shot prompting, is this ability to engage with an AI as if it were a conversation, an ongoing conversation, just like you would a person. That's my baseline recommendation, everybody, is don't think of it like you're talking to a computer. Talk to it like a person. You don't just one and done with a person. If you have a conversation, it actually works with AIs.
Yeah, look, prompt engineering is a really interesting one because I think even that's evolved significantly over the last 6 to 12 months. And where we have to be, Joe, when you said we have to be less specific and more informal, I think that's very true. And it's especially true in the education sense. So, historically, if there are educators around here, a lot of you probably will have come towards a question, you've been asked something of a student and you don't have the answer, right? It happens all the time. The beautiful thing about what we can do with artificial intelligence now is it's an efficient and streamlined way to generate that answer. based on the question you've been given. So I think what I find a lot of the times in education spaces is not every student learns the same. You're going to have a different level of learning, a different degree of responsiveness to the way that you're delivering a teaching and learning session. And I think what I love the most about AI in education is you can leverage that technology to help teach students that perhaps are not benefiting from your original style and adapt that to something that's more applicable to them. So let's say little Susie loves ballet, for example. What we could do is if we're learning about mathematics, we can take a certain question or a certain subject matter and try to translate that into a theme or an idea that little Susie would understand a little bit more. And what we're doing is we're able to personalize learning through artificial intelligence. So we're not delivering a broad sense of information as much as we are trying to generate a human feeling through the use of technology.
Excellent, excellent. One thing that's coming up in universities and the education sector is this idea of, this fear of assessment. It's very simple. We used to lock people in a room for 3 hours, tell them to regurgitate everything they've learned, and we gave them a nice piece of paper saying they could remember something for 3 hours. How do you think AI, and this is probably not just AI, we're seeing a lot of technologies, the internet in itself, for example, was the first wave of this in a lot of ways. But how do you think AI is going to change how we process knowledge and how we verify knowledge in the workforce?
I think the first thing is everyone learns differently. When I look at my children, they're 13 and 11, and even them, they're learning differently, and it's different to how we learn when we were at school. And, I think using it responsibly is the key thing. Being able to understand it and take that output and use it appropriately. Because, and again, like we said before, you've got to check it. It may not always be right. And I think that's the key thing.
But that's always been the case, hasn't it? I mean, whether it's using Wikipedia, which is obviously forbidden and frowned upon, but 99% of the time is pretty accurate. We've always had a situation where we are verifying our resources and our references, and that's not unusual. What we're doing through AI is we're being given a set of information that we can quickly and easily identify and then fact check that against something else, whether that's through a Google search, whether that's through running that against AI and trying to validate that information. We've got greater access to a more efficient pool of knowledge that we're able to then quantify and clarify moving forward.
I think what it'll do is it'll diminish the historical importance of like memorization, skill learning, kind of that rote aspect of education, and almost return it back to kind of the Socratic method where your learning is coming through a conversation, right? A working through a logicking of the topic and an exchange of ideas, except the exchange of ideas will be assisted or engaged with an AI, because an AI will essentially engage you tirelessly on almost any topic of your interest. And so it's kind of interesting. I find it very, very exciting, right? I mean, you think of what's the point of cribbing notes and things like this? You just ask for the answer, you're going to get that. But thinking about the issue, understanding the issue, coming to a point of view on the issue, that's where I feel is the real magic. And I think that for opening doors.
Totally agree. So I was going to relate it back to Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive thinking. I'm really hoping that we're going to see our students move from just attaining knowledge further up Bloom's taxonomy into critical thinking, synthesizing and analyzing. And they're just the skills that aren't tested enough at school because we're so busy trying to learn the knowledge and then repeat the knowledge. And as an employer, I'm desperately hoping that the shift in assessment and learning shifts to critical skills, creative thinking and innovation, because that's what we're going to desperately need in the workforce. If knowledge is democratized and everyone can access the same information, how do we innovate? How do we differentiate? How do we continue to evolve as a human species? We need these students to be learning these critical skills for the future.
You bring up a good point. I mean, one of the reasons I think education has resorted to some of those other things is they're easy to standardize the result of, right? You can grade a paper that's multiple choices. Grading a paper about the depth of thought and how well that's difficult. What if we could engage AIs that were actually able to kind of transform a conversation into some sort of an assessment? I mean, that will be possible. I don't know what it looks like, but all of a sudden, lowering the barrier to going and making those assessments, make them worth doing. So I think that'll go hand in hand.
Yep, agreed.
Excuse me. Yeah, and this, This one's kind of actually personal. I'm actually dyslexic, he says, with 2 iPads. Reading off here. So the fact that I can now use AI to almost give me a level playing field with some of my colleagues who may not be. So I think there's amazing advantages in education. And quite honestly, I think about people I hire. If one of my staff locks themselves in a room for 3 hours, writes a piece of code, never asking someone else about that piece of code, never looking at what someone's created before them, maybe search the internet to get some baseline, I'd almost fire them on the spot. We're assessing something that none of us want to actually see from our future, staff members in the workforce anyway. So it's a really weird one. Excellent. Have we got any more questions from the audience? Yeah.
So we've had disruptions in the past, bushfires in Hawaii and Australia, town would lose network access maybe for several weeks. What happens when the system's down and people have forgotten how to
There is actually a way out of that. So one of the good news, and you referenced it, is the advancements in the AI models they're not just getting smarter, but they're getting smarter, smaller. And so the whole notion of pushing AI to the edge is becoming very, very popular because you're right, hitting return costs you money. So they want to know, how do you reduce the cost? And so on-device AI is going to be a major, major advancement. You won't reproduce the frontier knowledge or frontier model kind of capabilities, but most day-to-day stuff will still be at your fingertips.
But yeah, if you take your inbox, for example, you can ask Copilot to summarize my inbox. I don't need to be online to do that because it's there on my laptop or on my desktop. So the content's there. It's got to just understand what's inside it.
And I think you're right. There's a time when your phone's out. You're thinking possibly the worst case scenario. You've got no access to power, so you've got no phone, etc. And I think practical skills are still going to be incredibly valued, if not become more valuable. I think those who can actually build, create, that's something that AI is not good at. The actual physical part, and I think those skills still become more important. And maybe if I turn your question around a little bit, maybe we can use AI to help best fight that fire, how best to coordinate our resources into getting help to the right places quicker. So AI, yes, it can't answer all those problems, but maybe it can help in those natural disasters. And in fact, I actually work in a disaster centre in New Zealand. We're already using AI to help inform our decisions about where we put resources for. And we're able to do modelling on the big Southern Alps earthquake. Probably not a good place to be, the South Island, if that ever goes off. But we're able to model, okay, what are we going to be, what resources will we need to move where fast? So I think, yes, practical skills are always going to be important, but we can actually use AI to assist in those natural disaster cases as well.
And every advancement of technology, we gain something and we leave something behind. And so you could make stories like that or examples like that for almost anything, right? And what if power goes out and all the grocery stores lose their power and I can't skin a rabbit? Well, I can't. I gave that one up, and I'm taking my chances, right? But you're right. The rest of the infrastructure usually makes that pretty safe bet.
How many people can shoe a horse these days? Quite a common skill in the 1900s. Very few people probably know how to do it.
You'd have to find a horse first.
Those who do it, highly valued skill now, and actually incredibly rare. Any other questions from the audience? Excellent. Just one last thought for everyone. So you're all working on various products, and you probably can't tell us what's, there's that product's coming in, but how's your company using AI, and what should we all be looking to see in some of your products coming out? And maybe the 5-year kind of mark, what we should be looking for?
So my dream is when the teacher's in the classroom, the screen will be there, but they don't really need to think about it. The screen will already know what part of the lesson it is, what content is applicable for that part of the lesson, and might even be able to preempt how the students are feeling about it, whether they're actually understanding it, and already be showing different, more relevant content So yeah, I really want to give the power back to the teachers to be able to spend the time with the students. They don't have to worry about the tech anymore. All those tech troubles and things that catch them up now that cause behavioral management issues in the classroom, they're all gone. The screen is just doing its job as it should be so that they can really be focusing on those really important moments with the students where they're having aha or really helping them to, get better at what they're working on. That's my dream.
So I could spend a lot of time on this one, but I won't. But I'm going to give you kind of a provocative run. So right now, right, Pro AV is all about, you normally capture a signal, you do some cleaning up, processing it, getting rid of noise, doing all that kind of stuff. You transport it off somewhere else. You reproduce it, or maybe even reprocess it to condition it for presentation, and then you present it, speakers or displays or whatever it's appropriate. Now think about AI, right? And what that might do to that traditional signal chain. With AI, what AI essentially does when it gets a signal, audio or video, it characterizes it. And not just in sort of like frequency spectrum, but in sort of base tokenization that doesn't have sort of a traditional signal metaphor. And so it's basically sampling it, and it can clone your voice and clone your face. And so when it transfers over, it doesn't transfer any signal, any original signal. It transfers a characterization of what was happening that it regenerates on demand at the other end. So it's almost like the Star Trek transporter, right? It really is in many respects, because it's modeling you, transferring the model, and using the model to regenerate at the other end. All of a sudden, that totally changes the way we go do our business. And I'll just let you mull on that, because I don't have all the answers what that means, but I find that amazing.
It's also a question that you have to ask, and I'd like to know everyone's perspective on this. 5 to 10 years from now, what sort of activity or participation do we actually see within the classroom space? I know we had experiences with hybrid learning through COVID, and there was a different reason for that. But has that opened up the door in tandem with artificial intelligence as far as the way that students are going to absorb information or learn, particularly those that perhaps might be a little bit more distracted by being within that classroom space or in that social element as well?
I think it's fundamentally going to change. Yeah. And we obviously haven't touched on AR or VR in this particular chat. But I think it's going to be, I hope it's totally different, because I think there's a lot of shortcomings with the way we educate students now. And so, I'm hoping that it really helps to take education to the next level.
And I think that applies not just to education, just to life generally. This is that third order effect that I was talking about. We keep talking about how we're going to do our business. So we have to think about what our business is going to be, because people won't learn the same. They won't work the same. They won't work in the same places, and it'll change the meaning of it. And that's going to be the biggest disruption of all.
Yeah, I do think there's going to be a world where personal learning becomes really paramount, because I think, having conversations with teachers and educators, often you do understand that there is a shortfall at the moment in the way we are delivering our lesson planning and our education to our students. And that's because not everybody learns the same. And so with the value of artificial intelligence, students will learn from home. They can learn within the same space. They can learn at their own pace. They can learn with what's relevant to them. And suddenly the broader sample size of information isn't as relevant to a class of 25 or 26 students. You're having students learn what's important to them because the knowledge is readily available, right? So moving forward, knowledge is going to be there. That's not necessarily what we're all acquiring. What we want to understand is, with that knowledge, how do we apply that to life skills, to the professional environment, to conversational environments? So there's a lot of questions that we need to ask, for sure.
And what an amazing skill that is for the teacher as well, having that technology available to them so they can customize that education experience for every student. Because quite honestly, as mentioned earlier, education is it's the reason we still use lecture theatres. It's easy. One person up the front speaking to 300 people, nice and simple, nice and effective. But if we can actually now take that information and help the students to pick their own way through the teaching process, that becomes so much more powerful.
I think that just comes down to how many of those 300 people are actively listening to that lecture.
Well, as you say, they can then pick and choose where they want to be in the campus, maybe. So wherever they feel most comfortable. Is it in a dark room? Do they feel more comfortable ingesting that data, or sitting in a lecture theatre? But I think from our side, when we look at how we're using AI to help develop our products and what it'll be in a couple of years, I think it's about doing less with more. So being able to have you don't have to have 300 engineers now trying to develop a product. You can feed, let's call it 1,000 different lecture theatre images, and then build up a picture of, okay, how does my product fit in that space? So you haven't got to model it all the time and understand it, and then once you know a model, then it's easy for integrators to say, right, I need this product from here, this product from there, and that will build me my room. So I think access to technology will be much quicker. We're able to design these solutions much easier.
Turning it around, what do you do with those 300 people? Because now you've got this amazing resource. There's two options. You can downsize. That's great. Or maybe you can use those people differently. So what's some of your thoughts on there?
I think, well, obviously, you've got that space that could be used for other areas, for the campus, rent it out for other, like events like this. You could make use of that space and make it a revenue generation place. But I think, you've invested a lot of technology probably in big spaces. So, yeah, you need to get a return on investment if you're going to plan and distribute your educators.
Yeah, I do think that's a long-term problem, though. I don't think that's in our imminent future. And these conversations are about what the future of AI looks like. And again, it is moving quickly, but the time frame between now and 10 years is very, very different as far as what that outlook looks like. So we should continue building those spaces, of course, because as integrators, we want to put in technology.
So in the category of the future is now, 2 days ago, there was an AI group in Japan who released a new model called AI Research or AI Scientist. And it's capable of generating novel proposals that it then goes and it writes experimental test plan, actually conducts the experiments on its own, drafts a paper based upon the results of that, submits it to a body of AI peer reviewers who then go and make commentary on how it can be improved, present it back to them, and then it goes through a refinement process, ultimately generating a completed draft of a education or of a publishable paper. The total cost of producing one of those is $15. $15. And that's today. And like you say, that's as expensive as it's going to get. It's going to get better.
That's US dollars, though, isn't it? It's
probably US dollars. So it's even, it's crazy.
It's more
That's like
expensive.
$18
New Zealand dollars.
Australian. So thank you for putting my, So anyway, it's just making the point of, right, you can imagine an army of researchers like that. All of a sudden, it's not just going to be education. It's going to be all fields that are going to be presented with those challenges.
And I would argue actually those opportunities. Like suddenly, if you can do that much more work, suddenly you're doing 20 research papers in a space that may have taken to do 10 minutes work, So how quickly can we advance knowledge?
If you have an extra $200 to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Any last final questions from our amazing audience?
So I played with a few of those, so I can answer that one to a degree. So there's two different centers. Some of them are closed box models, right? And those are the proprietary ones, and you don't have access. But that's just a choice of the person who trained the model. There's another group of models where all the parameters are published and known, and there's actually a tremendous number of those open source models. Now, knowing all the parameters still doesn't know you what all those parameters actually translate into in terms of concepts that the AI is actually encoding within all those parameters. And that is a well discussed but not solved problem. So the dark truth of the whole thing is in most applications, people don't really know how it is that an AI knows what it knows, which is both kind of freakishly amazing and outright terrifying. And I think both are legitimate reactions.
Yeah. Any other questions from our audience? Excellent. Well, thank you very much all. I hope that we can continue this conversation. The chat session stays open after the session, so feel free to answer questions there. And feel free, I'm sure all the panel will be happy if you want to make contact afterwards, please contact any of the panel. And it's been really good discussion. I've certainly learned a lot, and I look forward to future learnings in this space. The future is now, and it's a pretty exciting, little scary, but I think that's a good thing for us. We should be scared occasionally, but yeah, thank you. Exactly.
Thanks to the panel. Yep. And thank you very much. Emerson as well for hosting that. I just want to remind you that the AVIAs are on tonight. Okay, the awards are coming up. The AV Industry Awards. That's doors open at 5:30. There's no charge for that. 6 o'clock is when the awards will kick off. Food and beverage, thanks to Lenovo. Thanks to the panel once again, folks, and we'll talk about sustainability in AV at 4 o'clock. Thank you.